strange studies of strange stories. Haunted by Chad Fifer.
Terry was asleep on his back, mouth open in a soft snore, when a pie dropped onto his face. The impact didn't wake him. He couldn't remember a splat. It was the sudden smothering, a thick fluid in his nostrils. Gasping out of sleep, warm wetness on his skin, Terry smashed his palm to his face, catching the pie tin with a muffled whap and bashing his own nose. Sitting up, he flung the tin away into the dark like a living thing. Writhing out of his blankets, sweat freezing on his neck, he got to his feet and felt for the switch. Light. Terry blinked through froth at the familiar blurred shapes in the bedroom, reaching for his glasses on the nightstand and knocking a glass of water onto the carpet, drenching his socks. "Fwa!" he cried, jumping and tasting whipped cream on his lips. His tongue poked at it, licked the sweetness. He grimaced, spitting. He touched the runny fluff on his face and wiped a globule from his eyes, pushing his glasses into place. The stuff was white, smeared on his lenses, dripping on the carpet. Nobody was in the room. The door was closed. The window blinds were drawn and still. He looked at his closet. "Hey. Hey, man," he said in a weak voice. "Hey, I see you. Come out." But he didn't see anything. It was a frightened boast. Terry felt vulnerable in his t-shirt and underwear and wet socks. He surveyed the room once more, then advanced on the closet, sliding the door open with a fast grr thud, scaring himself with the loudness of it. Nobody in there. He pushed against his hanging clothes, looking in all the corners, and kicked at the boxes. Nothing. Behind the blinds, the windows remained locked, undisturbed. He looked at the pie tin on the floor, at the gelatinous cream dripping from his hand. After a hurried study of his one-bedroom apartment, Terry looked in the bathroom mirror and finally understood that he'd been hit in the face with a pie. Like a comedy pie. Nothing but whipped cream in an aluminum tin, dropped or pushed onto his face. He cleaned himself as if he'd been smeared with who knows what. Gathering the tin and leftover cream into a plastic grocery bag, he began a deeper inspection of his 700-square-foot dwelling. No secret doors revealed themselves. No strangers scrambled out of the laundry piles. The deadbolt was in place. The windows were foggy and locked. No snow was disturbed on the ledges, no handprints on the mist. The attic hatch in the broom closet was latched and hadn't been opened since he'd moved to the top floor of this 3-story complex 4 years ago. He grabbed a flashlight and peeked through the hatch once again to find a dark, empty gap, the beam illuminating brittle insulation, wooden supports, inscrutable ductwork, and unbreached spider webs. No human had been in this space for a long time. As he searched every nook and cranny of the apartment for possible methods of ingress, Terry's reawakening mind worked the problem. Somebody, somehow, had hit him in the face with a pie while he slept, then vanished. It had happened a few minutes after 3 a.m. He lived alone and had been alone for several hours before going to bed at midnight. He did not have any friendships of a type that would lead to an attack like this. No mean-spirited older brothers or prankster co-workers. He didn't have petty enemies or enough drama in his life to have enemies of any kind. "Let's be honest," he said to himself. "I'm a lonely person living alone. This makes no sense." Terry did not sleep for the rest of the night, checking and rechecking his apartment, then venturing out into the hallways beyond, feeling like a criminal as he stalked around in the empty hours looking for clues. The further he walked from his apartment through the complex, the more panicked he felt, as if the pie were a ruse to flush him out, and blasphemous acts were being committed in his rooms as he wandered. Every hurried return to his front door prompted another search of the entire space that housed him. As dawn crept across the walls, he expected some trick to be revealed, some camera, some TV host. But there was nothing. Only the remnants of the pie and the tin, filling the crumply plastic bag in the center of the kitchen floor like an avant-garde art exhibit. What was he supposed to do? Call the police? Nobody could possibly take him seriously. Every version of the story started with him being hit in the face with a pie. But he was the victim of a home invasion, right? A kind of assault, a violation? He'd never purchased whipped cream or a pie tin in his life. Somebody else had done it. There was no other explanation. His alarm went off in the bedroom and he yelled, "Shut up!" for some reason, then realized his hands were shaking. Sitting on the bus, he studied his bundled-up fellow commuters. It must have been a prank. Somebody did this to me, and if I'm calm, if I don't take the bait, they'll reveal themselves. Terry hadn't called the police. He couldn't bring himself to do it. But he didn't want to shower that morning either, feeling as if he were being studied by hidden cameras. He washed himself in the sink, got dressed, and left for work at the normal time, triple-checking that his door was locked. If it weren't for the evidence sitting on his kitchen floor, he could have convinced himself that the attack was a dream. A big part of him just wanted to ignore it. But it had happened. There was a pie bag to prove it. He went out to lunch as normal with the other two office bachelors, the other two nerds. They belched through their regular chit-chat about movies, manga, games. Terry had hoped that one of them might ask him pointed questions about the night before, suggesting guilt. But they didn't ask him any questions at all. For some reason, he felt like he needed to keep up with the conversation, as if he were going to be discovered for something if he didn't chime in. But that didn't make sense. Somebody had violated him, and he should say something. To somebody. Every moment that he didn't say something would make his story less believable. But should he say it to these guys? They had similar interests, but work had thrown them together, not choice. Their lives hadn't become intertwined like in sitcoms. In fact, he'd once related an embarrassing story from childhood to them, and they'd grown quiet, uncomfortable, twirling their ramen. So he knew there was an overshare line, and telling them about the pie would cross it. Like, the only way for them to understand that he wasn't full of shit would be to get really involved in his life. Come to his apartment and have a look. Ask personal questions. No way these guys would do that. Terry sat at his desk and searched for pie prank home invasion and the like. None of the results resembled his experience. This wasn't part of some social trend. Sure, there were plenty of pie-in-the-face videos, but they were videos, made for an audience. Nobody was sharing anything about silent pies in the dark. Later, sitting on the toilet, he scrolled through the short list of contacts in his phone, opened his various social accounts. It was the usual fake stuff, nothing about him. Nobody would ever pick me for a prank like this. Nobody knows me well enough for it to be fun. Returning home was fearful, but everything was where he left it in the apartment. Should he call the police now? I waited to make sure I wasn't being pranked. I didn't want to waste your time, but nobody fessed up, so you should come down here and have a look at this aluminum tin. He couldn't do it. Terry's normal routine was to stop at the store on the way home, grab something to stick in the microwave, and then have 4 or 5 beers while playing video games. He had some friends he played with online once or twice a week. They chatted about the news, shared in-jokes from school days, but mostly talked strategy and shouted. Tonight, he didn't have the stomach for it. He was too thrown off. He searched the apartment again, then watched videos about how to detect cameras and tried a million different things, detecting nothing. Standing on his bed with his hands on his hips, he gamed out ways that somebody could get in and out of his room, running his fingers along the solid, cold ceiling. He tried to think like a detective. His burrito beeped from the kitchen, but he didn't want it. Eventually, he looked up the non-emergency number for the police. Maybe there was some pie-in-the-face killer stalking strangers, and the cops weren't revealing details to the press. His experience might crack the case. He'd call and they'd be on the way. "Just stay where you are, sir. The pie is only the beginning." Hanging up, he'd hear a soft noise from behind him. Was that a slide whistle? He'd turn, his scream cut short by strangling hands. A killer in a clown mask. So cliché. But maybe the cops would bust in and shoot the fiend at the last moment. Ha! Nah. No way he would be the victim who got saved. He was shy, dumpy. Just some guy. Not a final girl. Maybe I should send an email. Something had to be done or this would torture him forever. He should call. Maybe it would be like the last call he'd made a month ago to the doctor's office. He had put it off for weeks, but it ended up being kind of pleasant. Before he could hesitate a second longer, he forced himself to dial the number and put the phone to his ear, a cold plunge. The woman answered and said something fast, aggressive. He didn't understand the words and was already sweating. "Hello? Hi?" he said. "Is this a non-emergency line?"
Yes.
"Okay, I'm not sure if maybe this is the right way to report this, but I had something smeared on me in the middle of the night last night while I was sleeping. A food item. And I live alone, so I think somebody broke in here or something. I woke up and they were gone." A long pause. Why hadn't he rehearsed this? Why was his voice so high?
Who am I speaking with?
He said his full name, spelling it out.
Are you a man or a woman, Terry?
"I'm a man."
Are you currently in danger, sir?
It was hard to read her tone. I don't know. I think I'm okay. But somebody must have gotten in here. I checked a million ways.
What did you say happened?
I was asleep and I suddenly felt something and I woke up and there was a food item on me.
A food item?
Like a cake or a pie. It landed there. There was some force behind it, like gravity level force, so it could have been dropped on me, not thrown. But there's no trap door or anything. It's just a normal ceiling, and I live alone. Like somebody pushed it on me and left. Somehow. I know it sounds like a joke, too, just so you know. I'm aware. Somebody hitting me with a pie. But it's not a joke. Another long pause.
And this just happened?
It happened last night.
Are you currently in danger, sir? Is there somebody there?
No, there's nobody here.
Can you come down to the station and report this? Would you be comfortable with coming down and talking to somebody who can help you?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Do I need to make an appointment with somebody?
Just come down when you can, sir. I can give you the address.
I know where it is. Okay, thank you. I'll come by tonight. Thank you. He hung up. Why did he say he'd come by tonight? It was already late and freezing, and he didn't have a car. Why did he tell her it was a cake and then tell her it was a pie? He had sounded so shady and weird, but his brain was glitching. What was he going to do? He didn't go to the station. Weeks passed and nothing out of the ordinary happened, no repeat incident. Terry remained on alert and dropped a few pounds, pacing the floors and skipping meals. He gave up the video games and grew despondent, half watching TV into the wee hours, sad for some life he'd never had or some future he'd let go. He was 28, and there was nobody in his world he could talk to about this. He ruminated on the imaginary person he could unburden himself to. Somebody who would trust what he recounted, not interrogate his credibility by default. An old friend who would understand the impossibility of what had happened, then talk through the possibilities. They'd sit together here or at some bar, some cafe, and after they'd talked it all out and the night was over, he could let this person go, knowing they'd pick up the thread again soon.
"Hey, maybe it was the ghost of the Three Stooges."
His parting friend would shout across the lot.
"They all have one ghost?"
He'd respond, laughing. Thinking about it was devastating. And then he'd think about the pie again. What had happened right before he woke up? Who was there in the dark? What thing was there? What did it want? What pleasure did it take in this? Was it still taking pleasure in it? He didn't like to remember the sensation of the whipped cream on his face. It felt like he'd done something wrong when he thought of it, the way he tasted it without knowing what it was. When he thought of it, it almost felt like he'd killed somebody or something. The wrong feeling felt so wrong, deep in his stomach. The bag was in his freezer now, the bent tin and runny cream hardening within. Did he need to get it tested or something by some lab? How? He didn't know where to start. Terry opened the freezer and looked at it again, the bag, afraid to touch it. Now that it was stiff and frozen, it seemed likely to move for some reason. He stared at it. Well, why shouldn't it move? Anything's possible now, he thought. Anything's possible. In the worst possible way. Years later, he won some money from a scratch-off and luxuriated by hiring a maid for a day, who threw the long frozen bag in the trash. He didn't discover the mistake until it was too late, and his material connection to the assault was now in a landfill somewhere. In the absence of the cold, hard pie bag, he found that he entertained more theories about science fiction rifts in dimensions or even the supernatural. The whole thing took on aspects of a ghost story, although he never lost faith in its reality. Sure, he questioned his sanity sometimes. Maybe he broke with reality on that one day only, bought the stuff, made the pie, pushed it into his own face, and then woke up, restored to sanity. But he knew that wasn't true. He knew it. Somehow, it had come from outside. Those few seconds in the dark never ceased to occupy a portion of his mind, and he suffered as a result. Never did he learn the explanation. And even as he lay dying, he was haunted by the pie.
Haunted was written, read, and scored by Chad Fifer, with the generous participation of Heather Klinke. Happy holidays to the listeners of Strange Studies of Strange Stories. Expect more original fiction in the new year, when you least expect it.